Okay, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It's a great pleasure to welcome each and every one of you to today's tutorial, where we are going to be looking at how to register a limited liability company in Nigeria. Our table of contents for today will be on what is a limited liability company. See, before you proceed in looking at, okay, I want to register a limited liability company, right? You need to have an idea of what a limited liability company is. It will look so unprofessional that you are engaging a client that you want to help him to register his or her limited liability company, and you don't even know what a limited liability company is. So it is a big slap. So now, because of that, to avoid such kind of embarrassment where you'll be asked some questions and you don't have at least an idea of it, that's the reason why I decided to say, before we proceed in looking at a practical step by step on how to get a limited liability company registered in Nigeria, there is need for us to understand some other key information components, what make up this limited liability company, what is it all about. You understand some key information that will, increase your knowledge. So when engaging with people, engaging with your prospect, you should be able to tell them what a limited liability company is. So now, what is a limited liability company is part of what we are going to be looking at today. Number two, required informations and documents needed to register a limited liability company. And number three, the minimum director required to set up a limited liability company. Number four, minimum share capital required. And number five is the stages of registering a limited liability company. Now these stages, that has to do with the practical section, although I will just give a brief review of the stages. Then in the next video you are going to watch a live section on how the registration goes, right? Okay, now let's look at what a limited liability company is, so that in case you are being asked by anyone, your client, your prospect, what a limited liability company is, so you should be able to tell them, you should be able to be bold and be confident of yourself and tell those people what a limited liability company is. Now, a limited liability company is a legal entity where the liability of the shareholder is limited to the quantity of shares held in the company. Now, this simply means that in the case of liquidation, their liability or debt is restricted only to the numbers of shares they have in the company. Therefore, shareholders won't be held liable for a liability above his shares. In addition, their exposure to risk is limited to the number of shares they have in the company. Now, we already know that a company is a legal entity, right? Where two or more people come together to pool their resources together in order to establish this to establish a company, so that they can maximize profit and to satisfy the public wants. Now, the coming of these individuals that make up this company, what they put together is called shares. They bring in their different resources together, call it shares, share capital, to establish this company, right? Now, it is called a limited liability company simply because in the case of liquidation or exposure to loss or risk, the liability of a shareholder is limited to only the number of shares he or she have in the company. That simply means that if Mrs. Adekunle has 5,000 shares in ABC Limited now, and the company is going into liquidation and there are debts that need to be cleared, that simply means that Mrs. Adekunle will not be charged more than 5,000 naira as what she has, more than 5,000 naira against what she has as shares in ABC Limited. You cannot charge her 6,000 or 7,000. Rather, her liability is only restricted or limited to only 5,000 naira, because that is the what value of shares Mrs. Adekunle has in the company. That is the reason it is called a limited liability company. Your debt or your liability is limited. You understand? So now, a limited liability company is subdivided into two. Yes, a limited liability company is further divided into what? Two. Namely, number one is the private limited liability company, and number two is what? The public limited liability company. But our focus in this video is on the private limited liability company and how to what? How to register a private limited liability company. Now let's quickly look at what a private limited liability company stands for. Now, a private company is defined by Section 2 of the Company and Allied Matters Act 2020 as amended as a company which by its articles number 1 restrict the right to transfer its shares. That simply means that members of the company are being restricted to transfer their shares to others. Number 2, limit the number of its members to 50. Now, the total number of people that can form a private limited liability company is just what? 50. Number 3, prohibit any invitation to the public to subscribe to its shares. That simply means that a private limited liability company are not allowed to trade their shares in stock market. Number 4, the private company ends their names with the word limited. So whenever you see a company that their names end with limited, like Polaris Bank Limited for instance, you see limited, you see JPS Limited, these are private limited liability company. Now, let's quickly look at the required informations and documents needed to register a limited liability company. If you're engaging a client or you're engaging somebody on that you want to help them to register their limited liability company, then they will ask you, what are the requirements, what are the documents, what information do you need from me? So you should be able to have a clip of the relevant information and documents you need to get from these people. So let's start from the first one. Proposed company name. You need to have at least two names available so that in case CAC is not satisfied with the first one, then they can choose or go for the second option. Number 2, objective of the company. You should be ready to write out statement of the objective of the company. Number 3, company address. The proposed company should have a targeted location. Number 4, valid means of identification of all directors and shareholders and their details like residential address, date of birth, signature, phone number, etc. Number 5, details of witness like his name, residential address, and so on and so forth. Number 6, the memorandum of association and article of association. Now, what is memorandum of association? Is very important you know this. According to O.A. Long and R.A. Cassim, they says the memorandum of association as an external rules of the company. The memorandum of association refers to the objective and power of the company and how they intend to deal and interact with the outside world. Thus, the memorandum of association contains the following informations like the name of the company, the registered address of the company, a declaration that the liability is limited, the amount of authorized capital. In a short note, a memorandum of association is a document that gives the public a view of what the company stands for. It tells the public what the company is and what they are there for. You understand? That's why in a memorandum of association, you see the following information like the name of the company, the registered address of the company, and so on and so forth. Now let's proceed to Article of Association. What is Article of Association? This is a document that states the internal regulation of a limited liability company. It contains the regulations that governs the internal management of the company's affairs. The following particulars are found in the document. Number one, the right and responsibility of the shareholders. But before I proceed further in giving you information contained in Article of Association, let me rewind and give you what and define what Article of Association is. Now, the Article of Association is a document that defines the rules and regulations that governs the management of how the company is being run, right? Now, the first information we said that is being found in the Article of Association is the right and responsibility of the shareholder. That simply means that in the Article of Association, the rights and responsibilities of the shareholders will be clearly stated. You understand? Number two, the duties and power of what directors also would be what clearly stated. Now, there is a difference between a director and a shareholder. Who is a director and who is a shareholder? Before you can be called a shareholder, that simply means that you have shares in the company. That means you have capital invested in the company. I cannot call Mrs. Ade a shareholder when she does not have shares in ABC Limited. You must have a stake, you must have something in that company before you can be called what? A shareholder. Then who is a director? A director is based on appointment. It is not necessary that they have shares in the company, rather they are being brought on board based on appointment, because the shareholders believe that they only have the finance to establish the company, but they don't have the knowledge. That is based on the shareholders' perspective. Now they only have the finance to establish the company, but they don't have what? The knowledge. So what they will do is they will go out to appoint people, to employ people as directors that will manage the affairs of what? The company. However, in a small company, a shareholder can also be what? A director. Yes, it's possible in a small company. Okay, let's proceed. We have seen the right and responsibility of the shareholders. Number two, the duties and power of directors. Then number three, how directors may be what? Appointed. So all this information, when you go through it, these are the informations that are being contained in the Article of Association. So all these things will be expressly explained and stated in the Article of what? Association. Now let's quickly look at this, which is a minimum director required to register a limited liability company. Someone may ask you, what is the minimum director required to register a private limited liability company? It's very simple. Formally, before the new Company and Allied Matters Act as amended 2020, the minimum required directors must be up to 2. That's the minimum. But presently, for a private limited liability company, one person can be a director. Thank you. The next statement is minimum issued share capital for a private limited liability company is 100,000 naira. Now the minimum issued share capital for a private limited liability company is what? 100,000 naira, as against 10,000 naira, based on what? The new or the repealed Company and Allied Matters Act 2020 as what? Amended. So you need to take note of that. Okay, having said all of this, let's quickly look at the stages of registering a limited liability company. The stages of registering a limited liability company. So at least I've explained and I've talked a lot about a limited liability company, defining what a limited liability company is, a private limited liability company, the required information, documents you need to register a limited liability company. So let's look at the final level, which are the stages of registering a limited liability company. Yeah, gone are the days whereby before you can register a private limited liability company, you need to go to CAC office within your own locality to apply manually. And usually, because of how tedious the whole process may be, most people do prefer contracting chartered accountants, legal practitioners to assist them in the registration process. But based on this new reform, and anybody or an individual who think he has um, the knowledge to learn can as well register his private limited liability company by his or herself. So it's very simple. So now we'll be looking at the stages, how the whole process is, and all of these are being done online. Now the first thing you need to do is, as an individual, not as an agent, as someone that wish to register his business name or NGO or company, the first thing you ought to do is to create an account as a non-accredited agent. I'll be dropping a link at the description of this video for you to watch how you can create an account with CAC as a non-accredited agent. That's the first thing. So having done that, then stage one, let's look at stage one. Search for name availability. Search for name availability. Now, before you proceed to name reservation, the first thing you ought to do is for you to check if that particular name you want to propose to CAC is available. You have to check. And the reason why you have to check to do this is, when you rush and apply for name reservation without confirming if that name is still available, CAC is going to reject your request. Yes. And when they reject it, that simply means you need to go and search for another name and submit to them. By doing that, you're just wasting your time and your money. So that's the reason why I do advise people that the first thing you ought to do is for you to search if that particular name you wish to register for yourself or for somebody is available. You have to go into name research, search on the CSC database to see if that particular name is still available for usage. So we are done with that, then you go to the second stage, which is the name reservation. How to reserve a name is very simple. I'll be showing you how to do that in the next video, how you can apply for name reservation for a private limited liability company. Is very simple. The third stage is commencement of registration. But before then, let me still say more about the name reservation. Now, the name reservation entails you submitting your proposed name to CAC for them to review and approve, right? And usually, name reservation after approval has a validity period of 60 days. So after 60 days, that simply means that CAC will revoke your application for name reservation, and anybody can claim such name. So that is the reason why as soon as you apply for name reservation and CAC approve it, then the next thing you need to do is for you to commence your registration process. Now stage 3, which is the commencement of registration. After CAC might have approved your proposed name, you commence the registration, and when you log into your portal, you see the following informations as listed: entity details, objective of memorandum. You are going to input all relevant informations. All of these I'm going to discuss extensively in the next video. So if you are new in our YouTube channel, there is need for you to subscribe by just clicking on the subscription button and smash the notification bell, so that when we release the subsequent video, which is the name, how to reserve a name and how to commence the registration, you will be notified on that. Thank you, and remain blessed. Feel free to share this video to your family and friends, so that by doing that you're also helping them to understand the process on how they can go about registering their private limited liability company. Sorry. Thank you, and remain blessed. I am Chris. I am Proverb Digital.